It's your pal, Realist News, Jason4, YouTube. You know, what was it about? Just a little more than a week ago, I read a couple articles from the gentleman known as Egon von Greyers from goldswitzerland.com. He writes articles every now and then. His companies, they essentially, at least one of them, is a metal storage facility, you know, outside the banking system, outside the paper system, etc. Again, you know me. I'm not advocating anyone puts their metals anywhere except for in your own possession. But again, there's people out there that have a tiny bit more money than you and I that don't feel comfortable leaving a ton of, you know, precious metals in their houses, even in a safe, so they would use a service like his. But the guy knows what he's talking about. He's got charts, shows the length of time, etc. Dollar running out of value, all paper currencies. He goes on to make the case how like 97, 98% devaluation has already occurred. And once that little 2% goes, you know, it'll be 100%. At that point, it's over. So when I see that, and I'm going to read this to you in a second, but when I see that, it makes me think of the old, you know, history of fiat paper money in its lifespan, which is typically around 39, 40 years. You'll be maybe pleased to know ours is pushing 45, 46 years now since 71. You know, when they took us off the gold standards, we're around, I think, 46 years right now. Having said that, it's just an average. Paper money has an average lifespan of 39 years. Sometimes it imploded sooner. Sometimes it imploded a little bit later, you know, years later. So the fact that we're at 98, 97, somewhere around that percent of value lost on our dollar, that tells me that we can't continue doing this very much longer at all. And I said, you know, should Trump be the president, and he is, he will be presiding over the United States bankruptcy, essentially, because he's the man when it comes to bankruptcies. I think that's might be part of the reason why he's in the White House as well. He's going to deal with the debt collapse, the paper currency problems that we're about to experience. Anyways, the pound, the dollar, the euro, and the yen will be worthless within 5 years, according to Egon von Greyers. The new U.S. administration has taken over with the conviction. You know, and let me stop for a second. I read this, and I'm like, well, when did you post this? January 27th. Didn't I already? It sounds familiar, like I may have read this. But I look back in my history of videos. I saw the couple that I did, but I didn't see this one. Like, you know, it sounded kind of familiar at first. Maybe he just wrote another recent article about it again because it's back in our faces. But I'm just going to say this. If by chance I did do a video on this a couple weeks ago, sorry about your luck. You're getting it again because this is pretty important. But again, I looked. I didn't see it. The new U.S. administration has taken over with the conviction that they will make America great again. I really wish they will succeed because a strong U.S. would be good for the world. Sadly, the odds of achieving that admirable objective are totally stacked against them. At the end of the next 4 years, there is a risk that the administration will be more hated than any government since Carter, and possibly even more disliked than Hoover. I've already kind of spoke on this if you've been following me for a little bit. And I said no matter who the president is this next time, and it could have been Clinton, okay? Could have been anybody. Could have been Ron Paul, for goodness sakes, all right? It's not going to matter who it is because they're going to be dealing with these debt collapse problems, the next big crash in the markets, the next problem with everything financial. It's going to be under their belt, under their watch. And I've said this way before even Trump became president, that whenever the next president comes, they will just be the man or woman in charge when all hell breaks loose, and everyone's going to point the finger at them. It's going to be their fault. No one's going to like them. So that's why I said, you know, maybe Trump gets the nod now because he's only going to get 4 years. And during his 4 years, the only thing he's going to be worried about is this economy. And people are going to hate him so much because it's going to look like he did such a horrible job that in 4 years we want him out as fast as possible so they can put the club back in. But Trump's not that kind of, Trump doesn't seem to be a pushover or, someone telling him what to do. Clearly the elite in the establishment can't stand him. So, again, I think they're going to say, well, that's fine. You want to win and you want to, okay, fine. Here's a fastball for you. See how you deal with that one, Mr. Trump. And then they're going to just, one after another, interest rate problems, debt problems, more foreclosures coming, etc. What's my second video I have to do right now after this one? The economic collapse blog. I mentioned some videos from them. Debt apocalypse beckons as U.S. consumer bankruptcies do something they haven't done in almost 7 years. I guess what that's going to be. But to continue on with this, Trump unlikely to reverse 100 years of mismanagement. The coming unhappiness with Trump and his team will not arise because of the actions they take. They will clearly do everything in their might to make America great again. But the probabilities are totally against them to achieve this goal. They are taking over power at a time when debt has grown exponentially since the 1970s. They are also assuming power of a country that has not achieved a proper budget surplus in well over a freaking half century. Even worse, the U.S. has not had a positive trade balance since the early 1970s. So here we have a country that has been living above its means for decades and has no real chance of changing this vicious circle. Trade wars and import taxes are unlikely to improve the situation. And what did Lindsey Williams say he was told? Which, by the way, I have his DVD. I just got it today. I'll be watching it tonight, taking my notes for tomorrow night when I do the videos. I'll do the summary then. So then that's when you'll get it the next day. But what did he say way back from his elite friend? Trade wars, currency wars, real wars. China's going to devalue. Everybody's going to devalue. U.S., as Trump has said, our dollar's too strong. We're going to devalue. And as I said, you better be holding on to precious metals. All these times and all these years that I've been yelling that, taking flack from people too, the day is going to come. It's going to come. And I don't think we have too much longer to wait. That I'm going to say, I told you so. Look at the price of precious metals today. And I'm going to say, I hope all you got it. I hope everybody's been listening. Everybody on Snapchat and Facebook and all this crap. I hope you did something constructive with your money instead of giving it to some manager, funds manager, who's going to destroy it. Not willingly, but it's going to happen. The federal debt is at $20 trillion and has been growing at a rate of 9% per year for the last 40-odd years. Of course, taking into consideration the last 10 years, I guarantee it's a tiny, tiny bit higher than 9%. We doubled it. The forecast for the next 4 years is that the growth of the debt will accelerate. Total U.S. debt is over $70 trillion or over 3.5 times GDP. But this is just a fraction of the U.S. liabilities. Unfunded liabilities are over $200 trillion. Add to that the real gross derivative position of U.S. banks, which probably is at least $500 trillion. The success of a president in the U.S. is closely linked to the performance of the stock market. Therefore, the best chance for a president to be loved by the American people and be reelected is for the stocks to go up. P&E's on the S&P index is now at 70% above its historical mean, hardly a position from which it's likely to surge. Corporate borrowings have surged since the great financial crisis started. In 2006, U.S. corporate debt was just over $2 trillion. Today, it's more than 3 times that, is up to $7 trillion. At the same time, cash as a percentage of corporate debt is declining and is now 27%. Within the massive increase in debt, there are major defaults looming in many areas like car loans, student loans, and the fracking sector, where potential write-offs could be in the trillions. U.S. corporate debt has tripled since 2006. Too many have no or inadequate pensions and or no savings, a looming catastrophe. Another disaster which is guaranteed to happen in the U.S. and the rest of the world is a pension crisis. Most people in the West have no or a minimal pension. Even for the ones who have proper pension plans, they are also greatly underfunded. It is estimated that U.S. state and local government pensions are underfunded to the extent of around $6 trillion. And this is after a long period of surging stocks and bonds. Imagine what will happen to these pensions when stocks and bonds collapse, which is likely to happen in the next few years. The table below shows 80% of Americans aged 25 to 64 have 0 or 1 times earnings in pension savings. In the 55 to 64 year age group, 40% of the people have no pension savings, and 60% have 0 or 1 times earnings. When the downturn hits the U.S., the majority of the U.S. people will have no savings and no pension. This will create a crisis of unthinkable proportions. Many Americans will be without a home and without food, since most people are only one paycheck away from bankruptcy. The coming financial crisis will, of course, lead to unlimited money printing, not just to help the American people, but also to prop up a failing financial system as the defaults rise exponentially. The impending catastrophe will not be limited to the United States, but will affect the whole industrialized world. As the most indebted country in the world, the U.S. will be hit very badly, and the Trump administration will be blamed. It is, of course, not their fault, but the result of 100 years of mismanagement. That's whose fault it is. 100 years of mismanagement. Everybody before him. Sadly, though, the people in charge of the country will be blamed in spite of their efforts to save the situation. As the U.S. economy crashes and the money printing starts in earnest, the dollar will end its reign as the world's reserve currency. Since Nixon ended the gold backing in 1971, the dollar has not deserved the status of reserve currency. Trump realizes that a weaker dollar would make American exports more competitive and also lead to U.S. manufacturing coming back onshore rather than in China and Mexico. What he might not appreciate is that the strongest economies have the strongest currencies, like Germany and Switzerland. A prospering economy has always gone hand in hand with a strong currency. Countries that continually devalue are without exception weak and badly managed economies. The only money that has survived in history is not man-made. And this is exactly what has happened to the U.S. since the dollar lost its gold backing. To measure currencies against each other never tells the whole story. Since all currencies are in a race to the bottom, the only correct way to measure the absolute performance of a currency is against a fixed value. Gold is the only money which has survived throughout history, and still gold is far from perfect, especially in recent times when the price has been kept down by a massive amount of paper gold issued by futures exchanges and banks. Once this paper gold market defaults, gold will go up by multiples of the current price. So let's have a look at how gold has performed against the only real or true money that has ever existed. The reason why gold is real money is because it's the only currency that nature has produced. Sadly, no money that man has produced has ever survived. The table below confirms history, and I'll show it to you. In a short 45 years, the best performing currency, the Swiss franc, had lost 87% against gold, while the two worst ones, the US dollar and the pound, have lost 97% and 98% respectively. Again, as I read this, I feel like I've already done this video, but it's really relevant. It's just, if I did, I apologize. I'm doing it again. It's one of those ones I want to hang on to and maybe email myself like for a later date. So it says it's absolutely remarkable that the U.S. and U.K. currencies in just under half a century have lost all but 3% and 2% of their value. The table above confirms that all the above currencies will reach their intrinsic value of zero within the next few years. Something that has fallen in value by 87 to 98% is guaranteed to complete the journey until it lost 100%. Or has lost 100%. Anyone betting against that would be certain to lose his bet. So it is not a question of if, but when. I've been predicting for a while that the overvalued U.S. dollar is the next currency to fall. Technically, it looks like the coming dollar collapse could have started. Trump's statement that the dollar is too strong might be just the catalyst needed. Gold $10,000 and silver $500 guaranteed, he says. This is right in line with Webbot from years and years and years ago. When the situation unfolds in the next few years, gold is guaranteed to go well above $10,000 in today's money and silver over $500. But we are, of course, not going to see today's money in a hyperinflationary world. Therefore, the gold and silver prices will depend on how much money is printed. A price of 100 billion or 100 trillion per ounce, like in the Weimar Republic, would not be impossible, but that is, of course, a meaningless level in today's terms. What is clear or certain, however, is that gold and silver will vastly outperform inflation and therefore do a lot better than just maintaining purchasing power, which is what I've always said. You're going to be happy with it. It's just to protect your wealth, but you might make a small fortune in the process of hanging on to precious metals. Again, this is what we call fundamentals. The fundamentals say, how is silver 1750 or whatever it's at 1770 something today? Gold 1230 or so. They should already be way past that level. But again, with the paper exchanges, that's how they're manipulating it. So, like he says, I think when this all comes unglued, I don't think I want to be in anything paper. Like Lindsay said a long time ago, they told him, don't be in anything paper when this all goes down. Gold and silver is the only money. That's what they told him, the club. And I still think that's very true today. But you could lower the market's 20,000 Dow Jones or, Again, these are massive bubbles. What are the chances that these bubbles will go even higher with massive more printing coming on, QE and everything else? And again, interest rates, they're killing the savers, etc. They're just bubbles that are, where else can we inflate a bubble? And there's like nothing left. So there's only one way to go but down. Could we have more highs as we get through the year? Sure. But I think like him, in sometime in the near future, whether that's this year, next year, 3 years, whatever, it has to be going down. It's going to go down. And again, if I see $500 silver, I'm going to go buy a house and still have silver left over easily. Okay, and I'm not talking about a super expensive house. Maybe a $250,000 house, which at that time, mind you, would have been the equivalent of probably a $350,000 house, $400,000 house, in my hopes, based off of the real estate market crashing. But again, this other video I'm doing next, with the consumer bankruptcies coming back again, again, they did nothing but patch up this little hole in the sinking ship. Nothing has changed. We're more indebted than ever before. The banks are more insolvent than ever before. Nothing has changed. Just a little bit of time went by. They patched the holes. Years have gone by. Oh, man, it's been 8 years, man. Dang, Jason, man. Would have thought it'd been here by now. You know what? I agree. Would have thought it would have been here by now. It shows you how much power they have to really string this thing along. But you can string it along as you want. It always has the same ending. And just because we thought it would be here a little sooner doesn't change the ending. Ending's coming the same way. It's going to be painful. Again, hope you have your precious metals. I hope you have them. Take care.